Good evening. This is the Tuesday, July 17, 2018 Town of Monroe Planning Board meeting. Could you please take a roll call vote of those in attendance?
Anthony Vaccaro.
Here.
Lisa McQuaid.
Here.
Rich Triano is absent. Bonnie Franson.
Here.
James McKnight.
Here.
Jason Zirinsky.
Here.
Jeff Manson.
Here.
We have a quorum for this evening.
All right, with that, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to point out the fire exits. There is an exit in front of me over by the kitchen, as well as another exit that leads the main door out to the parking lot. And the third exit is here to my left, which also leads out to the main parking lot. With that, I'd like to bring up Bevacqua subdivision. This is a new application in front of the planning board. For whatever reason, it was missed at the last meeting, so you're here at this meeting. So thank you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Good evening. My name is John Mock. I'm an engineer and land surveyor employed by AFR Engineering and Land Surveying.
Thank you. Why don't you give us an overview of what's being proposed?
Please sit down and talk into the mic so we get it. Thanks. The applicant has a very, very much oversized lot. He has over 9 acres. He has road frontage on 2 roads. He is simply proposing to divide it into 2 lots. The existing house would remain in place and would access from Talbot. The proposed dwelling and lot we'd like to develop would be accessing out on the Harriman Heights Road. There are some wetlands on the site. There is a stream that cuts through the site. We are so far over in terms of size that we don't think we have any issues with respect to meeting the zoning.
In terms of you're proposing a septic and well, or would you hook?
Septic and well.
Septic
There
and
are
well.
no facilities near it to hook up to.
Okay, and they're not in the district, Orange County district?
Right.
Okay.
Actually, I can't comment on whether or not they're in the district.
In the district.
Right.
All right. I think we'd want to just confirm that you're not in the district. I mean, even though the facilities can't be extended, we should probably, as a map note, understand whether or not you're physically in the Orange County Sewer District or not. There's a couple maps in the comp plan which may, actually, I may be able to figure this out here. I'm just going to pull up the real property information for your lot. In the meantime, Sean, I believe you have a review,
I do.
and
Yep.
has the applicant received it, or?
I
I
don't.
just handed them a copy.
Okay.
Okay.
I
I've got
received it about 5 minutes ago.
Okay. So why don't you run through that?
Sure. Mark's first comments about being the OSR 3 district with a small portion in the Ridge Overlay. Ridge Preservation Overlay District. He notes that the one existing single-family residence is in the RPO zone, and all proposed development is well to the west in the RPO. He says that the required bulk information is correct for the zone and the use. And he gets into, as Mr. Locke pointed out, that there's some wetlands and streams and flood areas and drainage easements throughout the site. And potentially steep slopes, and the bulk table provides an area subtraction for this area, but we still need to evaluate that further. The proposed values will be provided for both lots. The bulk table should provide the values for both lots, both proposed lots rather than just the one. And we have not received the resource analysis plan. for the property. That's now required. The plan should show who benefits from the easement shown on the plans, near Talbot Road. The plan depicts an on-site sanitary disposal system, and this is something maybe we need to get from the board, maybe not tonight, but something that should be discussed is whether or not soils testing should be witnessed by our office for the sanitary system. Mark recommends that the well for the proposed residence, which would be the westernmost lot, that well be have greater separation from the county highway because of the salt and potential contamination. The engineer should show the existing wells and sanitary disposal systems on the adjoining lots so that we can verify that the adequate separation is available for the proposed lot. The next one is about the standard approval box at the bottom right-hand corner. Then Mark questions about, there's a filed map number near the north arrow, and he's wondering, since this is not an approved subdivision, why there's a filed map number, and this will require 239 referral, and Orange County DPW should be referred to this since they're proposing a driveway off the existing county road.
So, one question, in looking at the property details, it indicates that this is lot 33 of the Orchard Hills Farm, section 2, map 681-03. So one of my questions would be, for that subdivision, is this property allowed to be subdivided? I don't know if there were any conditions established as part of that subdivision. Let's say, for example, if it was a cluster subdivision, was this area or were these lots allowed to be further subdivided? So that's just a question I would have. Another question I would have is, I believe in the current zoning regulations, we no longer allow flag lots. And one of the lots appears to be a flag lot. So, however, it's a pre-existing situation because that's an existing driveway, correct? Coming in from
Yes.
the flag. So if it's pre-existing and yet they're subdividing it again, I don't know whether that would or wouldn't require any kind of variance. So that's just a general question. We have to make sure that the environmental constraints are subtracted out when the net lot area is determined. Although I tend to agree with you, it looks like it's pretty large, the lots themselves. But there is in the minimum lot area also language about excluding easements. So I think we need to find out whether any of these easements would fall within those exclusions for minimum lot area. In general, I drove past the site. Is it pretty steeply sloping down from Harriman Heights Road?
Off of Harriman Heights Road, it is fairly steep coming off the road there, yes.
Okay, so, but you're gonna kind of wind the driveway
We can
down?
do the driveway in at a little bit of an angle, and we can make this work.
Okay. I just am preliminary looking at this. Is there a grading plan associated? Do they show the limits of disturbance?
I don't see any proposed grades, and I don't see any limits of disturbance.
Okay, so we'll just want a limits of disturbance line, just to make sure you're under the acre for a SWIP.
Okay.
Which I suspect you probably are, but
Yep.
we need to make sure you don't need soil erosion or sediment control shown. Or you may need it anyway because of the fact that it's steeply sloping to put the driveway in.
It's a good idea, just have the practices during construction. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. We do have standard map notes now that we put on, it's a house relocation note, it's called, in the zoning that should be added to the map. So, you know, where you indicate the dwelling's going to go is where it will go. we're going to need, trees surveyed, because we do have a tree, section of the code, that requires they be surveyed within the areas that are going to be disturbed. I have to check and see if Harriman Heights Road in the comp plan, if we call it a scenic road, because, I don't know if you mentioned that, but if it's a scenic road, then there are some additional standards that apply as far as setbacks and limitations on cutting, within a certain distance of the road. In terms of the wetlands, is there any disturbances to the wetlands, or you're staying well away from the
We're not
wetlands?
proposing any disturbance to the wetlands.
Okay. So, Mike, as far as wetland permits, if they're not disturbing the wetlands, the local permit, I don't think this would come into play then?
I don't think they'd need the permit, but if they come close, you at times have required markers in the area.
Okay. Sean, do you guys typically look at the wetland delineation to see if it appears to be accurate? Or
Well,
would you bring someone in?
we can only go by what's surveyed, right? We could always go take a look to make sure that it's, if it looks right.
Okay,
If you'd like, yeah, we can go visit the site.
right. Is it staked out in the field, John?
I don't know if the flags are currently in place. We actually started this project before the moratorium went in effect,
Oh, okay,
so it's been sitting for a while.
okay. So, I think you need to confirm the location, so,
Right. In order to do that, we need the flags.
Yeah. well, how close is the closest disturbance area to the wetland in general?
We tend to think you're looking well over 100 feet.
What's your scale?
50.
50?
It's a 50 scale drawing.
So it looks like, is it the septic that's the closest
Yes.
to
But
it?
we even have some flexibility in terms of moving the septic a little further or changing the location of it slightly.
Okay,
Under your former zoning, we actually thought we were having the possibility of getting 2 lots up on this roadway. And the way the zoning got changed, it was consolidated to 1, and we frankly had already done testing for areas, splitting them apart and different locations on it. So,
I'm weighing whether or not a delineation or flagging, additional flagging is necessary, so you don't recall offhand whether there's flags there?
I haven't looked at the site in the last few months.
Okay.
I would also point out that when they did the subdivision on this last time, they went and established easements and things around wetlands and things. And given the grades that you have on this site, you're not likely to have the wetlands change location. I'm actually quite surprised at some of what was considered to be wetland, because you don't generally have wetland on areas with this steep a grade. In my own mind, I would question whether some of these are truly wetlands.
Who did the delineation?
I don't know. I would have to check with the applicant who they had in on this beforehand.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to know who did the delineation, and we should note it and when they did it. And if there's any kind of wetland report or data sheets for the points that were surveyed, if you could submit those. We will need to send to New York State DEC because your EAF indicates you're in an area with potential sensitive species. I suspect they're bats.
The bats.
Right.
It's always the bats.
Right, so, but we would coordinate with them. I mentioned the scenic roads we'll have to evaluate. Cluster subdivision, so at this point, so the town has mandatory cluster subdivision provisions, and the planning board can waive those provisions in situations where the lot is under 5 acres. Yours is larger than 5 acres. So it does require, and I think what you, Sean, were probably alluding to was some kind of resource analysis.
Right.
The planning board doesn't have to pursue a cluster subdivision, but the initial submission needs to include just a map that shows any of the sensitive resources that are laid out in the cluster subdivision. I think you've shown a lot of it already, as far as the wetlands and other resources, but just note that a resource analysis needs to be submitted on a map, so that the planning board can determine whether or not a cluster should be pursued. I suspect there's limitations here, given the fact that you have.
I can't see a reasonable scenario for
Yeah.
any type of a cluster development of this.
Right. And I think we have to look into that. We don't disagree necessarily, but it's just a required submission, the resource analysis. So it's just a map that shows and illustrates the resources on the property absent showing the improvements, so we can take a look at that. So those are my thoughts. Board members, have you had a chance to look at the plan, or do you have any comments?
What's the easement shown there for?
Which one are you
In the
referring to?
middle, near the proposed property line. It looks like a stream easement, or? Kind of winds its way from the.
There's an easement winding around the wetlands, and I believe that was set up as some type of a conservation easement.
I think it would be helpful if we get a copy of the Orchard Hill subdivision map to see its notes and a copy of the resolution if we can. I'll look and see if I have it, but I don't think I was preparing resolutions back then. So Noreen, maybe you could look and see if there's a copy of that resolution.
Orchard Hill?
I think that was the name of it, John.
Yes, we've provided the references for it on here.
Yep.
In fact, that's actually, the lots that were part of the subdivision, we've noted lot such and such, file map, whatever. Similar to up at the north arrow. That's a reference to what the bearing system is on this. It's based off of that file map. It means we didn't go out and do an astronomic north reading. We're not doing it in the New York State Plane Grid. It's off of a particular reference.
But if these lots are part of one of those subdivisions, we should see that map, its notes, and the resolution, that's all.
I'll be happy to see what we can do to make it available. My recollection is it's a very, very large plan set.
Well, we should have it here.
Yes, you should.
I will do my best to find it, unless it's in Pennsylvania.
Unless
Do you
it's
know what
moldy.
year this was done?
Not off the top of my head, but let me see if the reference indicates anything. No, it's been 2003.
Okay, thank you, that gives me a place to start.
So I was looking at the property details, and at the bottom, special districts, it indicates SWO 060, County 1 bond, so I'm guessing it's probably in the district, in the Orange County Sewer District. Even if they're not connecting to the system, did we still have to coordinate with Orange County Sewer District, or do we have to send the plans to them? I'm not sure how that works.
I'll talk to Mark and see.
Okay. So, yeah, it looks like you're in Monroe Fire, Library, Town Lighting, Refuse. And there's a special district for Orchard Hills, which may be drainage district.
Drainage probably, yeah.
So if a new lot is created, they're part of that district then?
If this was part of that subdivision and the area of the drainage district was the entire subdivision, they would be part of it, yeah.
So then we should add a map note to that effect, that they're part of the district if that's the case. Any additional questions? I'm looking up scenic roads right now just to see and confirm if Harriman Heights is.
It definitely is.
It
It's
is.
in, it's 475 or 76. I think 476 in the comprehensive. But, and I guess in relation to that, my two comments would be, it seems like, and not having walked the property or anything, that the house is kind of pushed forward on the lot into one of the steeper parts of the grade rather than a little bit further back where it's flatter. And the way the proposed driveway cuts across the front, if there's a scenic road issue there, I guess to get the driveway in at that, across the front like that, it seems like it would take out a lot of trees that might preserve some of the scenic value, whereas bringing the driveway, like, I don't know if that's where the garage is gonna be, and then, of course, you need the driveway there. But, if you could bring the driveway back along the right side of the house as you're facing Harriman Heights Road, towards that side of the house, where it's a little bit less graded, and if you're bringing the driveway straight back, I don't think you'd lose as much of the scenic quality. So just commentary.
I have to say I completely disagree with you.
Okay.
In that, basically, we tried to place this as far to this side so as to work with the grading. If you move the house over this way, your only way of getting in is going to be a much steeper driveway. What we did is we placed the house to this side so that we could use it as something of a retaining structure. You'll do whatever's needed in the way of fill, minimize what work you're doing in the front. With respect to putting the house fairly close to being forward, if you look off the next lot over, you
Yeah.
see a frame dwelling. We've done that at a similar setback.
Okay.
There are a row of houses at this type setback. We're trying to fit into the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Do you have any idea what portion of the property is in the ridge protection area?
I think we need to show that on the map.
I don't believe it impacted anything where we were proposing any construction, and I believe that matches the comments that you have from your consultant. I believe a small portion of the area of the existing constructed area is within your ridge protection.
Mark has kind of a red line sketch on here of the RPO, and to concur with Mr. Locke, so.
Yeah, I think we just want to show it because in the future, if the homeowner decides to make improvements,
Absolutely.
you know, they should be aware of where it's located. And it is zoning that's applicable to the site. And yes, Jeff, Harriman Heights is scenic road. And while I agree also that there's maybe a pattern, I think we'd have to look to more than just the adjoining house. And I kind of tend to agree with Jeff's comment that there seems to be easier topo to site the house than there, which will have to be a little terrain adaptive. And I'd really like to see for it to be there, what kind of grading is going to be required. You're front-loading the garage?
At this point, we're showing a generic house.
Okay, so it's not
You
really
know, I mean,
designed.
realistically, somebody's going
Yeah.
to come along and say, you know, this is the house I want you to try and fit on this lot. And within certain restrictions, you can make a variety of houses work on here. As an example, I would expect somebody would want something that's going to be a walkout basement, take advantage of the fact that you have the grade dropping off. It's obviously not a site that would be for a big sprawling Victorian.
Right.
But, you know, we're trying to show something that reasonably could work. We know that the driveway right now is following as close to the contours lines as possible to minimize the grade that we're bringing this in at.
So I'm looking at the map here, it looks like just a little sliver. It's actually on the lot that is
Existing.
Already
existing,
improved.
right? It looks like it's right after you come in from the flag. You could see it right here. It's right here. I don't know if you can see my pointer on the screen. So here's the flag, and then it's this area here. So I'm guessing it's where your driveway, garage, but the house seems to be out of it. But we should show that anyway for the future. And so this must be Orchard Hills Farm in here.
And then let me get where I can see this.
Yep, so here's the flag. And so this is the ridgeline area. And so you're proposing to subdivide something like this, right? Right in here. So the new lot isn't affected, but, you know, there's just a little area on the existing lot.
If you're looking at the right side of Harriman
And as I said, we did
Heights
confirm this is a scenic road too, which requires certain
Other than the
standards.
graphic representation, is there any particular definition that is used in defining what is the ridgeline?
There is. It's
Okay.
in, I'm pretty sure it's in a definition in the code. And there's a whole section on ridgeline preservation
We'll
overlay
look
that
at it and see
explains it.
What can be used to,
Yeah, and I don't know that it's going to, I don't know that it's going to be a concern because you're not doing anything over there. Any other comments from board members?
I have a question. When the land, if it's gonna be 2 lots, is the lot gonna be up for sale, or is it going to be sold without the home on it, or, I don't know what if that's even something we need to know.
I don't know if the applicant has a plan in terms of whether he wants to be the builder or whether he just wants to sell it.
Right, so the house is just pictured, the house is pictured somewhat for our convenience to see what it could be developed into?
Yes, we've shown a generic sized house, approximately where we would anticipate we would want to put that on the lot.
Thank you.
If I may suggest, I think Bonnie touched on the position of the proposed well. I don't know if we touched on it. I think we did, but it's a bit close to the county road.
Yeah, I think
And,
Sean mentioned it.
Yes.
All right, yeah. We tend to oversalt, and that could definitely be in a better place. And just for,
We will look into that.
and definitely for future developments with whatever the applicant or owner wants to do with this land, I'm a firm believer that if you mark it now, you can save it for the later, and it just makes things a whole lot easier for future developments as well.
I'm
So
not
the
sure I
more-
understand the comment.
So more flagging, more delineation that we have on our maps and what we have out in the field, I think would be easier and better for us in the future.
You mean as far as monitoring and ensuring
Yeah.
there's no disturbance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do you know if the Heller property, does that have a house on it?
Which is the Heller property?
To the southwest?
It does have some structures on it, but they are nowhere near this property line. They are much further to the south.
Is it this large property you're talking about?
It's a triangle one, no, near the road, yeah.
Oh, this one here?
Yes. Okay.
What are you trying to determine, Anthony?
I was wondering where the house was, if it was developed or if it was,
There is some
Overland.
development on it.
okay.
So that's the Heller house. That's what you're referencing.
And just with regards to the flag lot
Yeah, there's
comment, you're right, Bonnie, and I just repeating what you said, I guess, is that the flag portion is on the existing developed side, so the other proposed part of the lot is not a flag lot.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Right. So I don't know how it's worded, if it says flag lot prohibited, but it's a pre-existing condition. I would just want Mike's input in terms of
Yeah, I
we're
wonder what the
subdividing it, but
definition-
it's already existing, so,
Yeah, that's, okay. Got it. Thanks.
One more question regarding water. The existing building or structure that's there is already on its own well and own septic system?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you.
So I was just checking quick. It looks like the stream is classified C, so DEC doesn't come into,
Right.
there's nothing in effect as far as protection of waters. And then the environmental resource mapper says that rare plants and animals are state listed bats. Not specifically which one. You have to get that from DEC by writing to them.
Meaning-
Any other questions, board members? So I think in terms of moving forward, what I would recommend is, I think we need the sheet with the resources shown. If it requires steep slopes, we need to see that demarcated. We will need the wetlands checked. You may want to do just a first cursory review to see even if the markers are still out there, and if they're not, we'll decide, whether they should be shown. If they're really distant from the areas of disturbance, then I don't know that it's, that we have to really go out and have them flag again. But I think it's just good to take a look at the site and see if you see wetlands there. Scenic roads is coming into play. Show the RPO area. Again, I think we need to look at Orchard Hills Farms and the conditions and whether there are any map notes or anything affecting this lot. We need to add that it's in the drainage district. We need to add the house relocation notes. Again, just kind of summarizing everything we discussed. There was a discussion about possibly pushing the well back. I think that's it.
This will need to go to Orange County Planning or Orange County DPW. I don't know if the EAF is completed yet, and that would need to be sent, so.
Right. Is the EAF complete? Do you
I haven't
have a
looked at it. I
chance?
don't know.
I think we still have to look at that. I think we'll wait to start our referrals to the next meeting, if you can get the resource analysis in. And we can send a letter to DEC with the map just to find out, again, what are the species specifically. If they're bats, we know the standard map notes, will have to be added as far as time restrictions on when clear cutting can occur. Again, the trees, take a look at our tree section of the law in terms of what needs to be shown on the map. Limits of disturbance, potential soil erosion control measures. Those are the items, and, of course, whatever's in McGoey, Hauser, and Edsel's memo. And then I think for the next meeting, once we have additional information, we can decide whether we want to do coordinated or uncoordinated review, see if we want to circulate to other agencies, and get that process going as well. Any questions, John?
Your standard map notes, are they published?
The house relocation notes are in the zoning. Standard map notes, I don't know if that's in the subdivision regulations section.
We can look, and if you reach out to us, we can provide those.
Right.
So,
So we'll make sure Mark or Sean send those to you as far as what should be shown on the plan. All right.
Okay, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
John, the next meeting is August 9th, and the submission date is July 26th. Yeah, July 26th.
And maybe what we can do after you read the tape, put together kind of a list of all the items we discussed to send to the applicant's representative. All right. With that, those were all the projects in front of us, and we are moving on to training. Yes, you want a break? Okay, let's take a 5-10 minute break. Thanks, George.